Paranormal Buzz Radio is proud to present Girls vs. Ghost Media's Spoopy Talk with Madison Smith from Madison Paranormal. You can find Spoopy Talk every other Sunday, 6 Eastern, 5 Central, right here, live on Paranormal Buzz Radio. Be sure to join in the live interactive chat by going to Spreaker.com or downloading the Spreaker app for all devices.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of Paranormal Buzz Radio or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is strictly prohibited. For information on everything Paranormal Buzz Radio has to offer, visit our website, paranormalbuzzradio.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Listener discretion is advised.
Here's your host, Madison Smith. And welcome to Spoopy Talk.
Hi everyone, I'm Madison Smith. I would like to welcome you all to Spoopy Talk with Madi. This week's guest is someone I met at Wimmick Mansion at my first ever investigation. We have investigated a few times so far, and one place I wish I could tell you more about, but has a secret. He is a younger half of All Out Paranormal, and also does Paranormadic, as well as he is a nomadic Neilson, or Neilson, whatever. So please welcome Chris Neilson.
Hey, thank you. And I don't think we have to keep it a secret anymore. So Spook Cave's doing its first ever paranormal investigations this year. The first ever actual paranormal investigation inside of Spook Cave itself. Well, one of the the actual longer ones may or may not have involved may or may not involve Madison here.
All right. So, just before we start, so if anybody in the comments has any questions, comment them in the comment section, and I will try to get to them. If I don't see them, just spam them. I'll see them. All right. So, shall we start?
Yeah, I think I'm ready.
All right. So, how long have you been investigating, and when did you first figure out you wanted to investigate?
I think I first started getting a real idea when I was probably about 16. I had my first actual paranormal experience right around the age of 8. But, yeah, it was one of the things that was just kind of a interest of mine until about 16. It was weird. I had just a, public library had done a big book sale. I got a hold of a few of Hans Holzer's books. And it just got me interested. Started looking up paranormal locations. Started doing some little stuff here and there. Never really got the ball rolling with that until about 2011, though, when my dad and I founded All Out Paranormal.
Mm-hmm. All right. So where did you have your first paranormal experience, and how old were you?
I was about 8 years old. I was at my grandparents' house, which, I mean, to this day, been... Arizona to, I think, Pennsylvania is the radius right now, investigations, countless locations, and it's still easily one of the top 5 most haunted places I've ever been. But like I said, I was about 8 years old, and I just, I saw a little boy on the stairs of their house that obviously wasn't there to a certain degree. I mean, he was obviously there, but...
Yeah.
He wasn't an actual... He was one of the little boys without the meat suit, so to speak. And yeah, ever since then, I just... it's been kind of a lifelong fascination.
All right. So talking about your grandparents' home, did you ever have any other experiences there, or was that it?
Oh, yeah. So after Dad and I started doing investigations, it was one of those things we were like just perpetually over there with cameras, our single digital recorder at the time, and it was actually my first experience of having been physically touched on investigation.
Yep.
So this is not a a particularly proud story for me, but I share it anyway because it's a learning experience.
Yep.
So back in the day, if I can phrase it as such, you could tell I was a guy who watched Ghost Adventures, which I'm proud to say I've grown a long way since then. But I was in my grandparents' bedroom, and we had just done an EVP session, re-listened over. And at one point, one of the questions was, who do you like more, me or the big, tall, bald guy that was in here before? His name's Rex. And instantly, we got Rex. And, that's going to be, if you think back, that's natural. Some people just can be more fond of other people than yourself. That's part of life. But I, for some reason, went up there, took it personally. I got to do, a little bit of provocation, which was absolutely stupid of me. And I had finished up my EVP session / ranting and raving. I walked out of the bedroom, and it just felt like two hands pushed me on the small of my back, and it was hard enough that it actually made me stumble. I kind of fell to the floor a little bit, and I had turned just in time to see that door close. So that was my, that was, like I said, it's not my proudest moment, but it was also easily if not one of my biggest learning lessons through all of my paranormal investigation career, so to speak, was just that, holy crap, I'm dealing with people. They're going to get hurt. They're going to get offended just as easily as I could. And on top of that, just, the phantom voices, there's all sorts of funky stuff going on in that house, doors closing. My aunt used to hang wind chimes on the cupboards, and it wasn't to an exterior room or anything. There was no drafts or anything like that, but you'd hear the wind chimes going. Just all sorts of funky stuff going on in that house.
All right. So what got you into investigating, and how did you come up with your group name when you first started it? What got me into the investigating part was a combination of things. So if we were to backtrack to way back in the day, it was actually I had read before the book sale, all that stuff that started the actual look into it. I had read the Amityville Horror, and that was kind of one of those things that started to pique my interest, and it kind of spiraled into actually looking into actual hauntings, that sort of thing. Fast forward to post-high school, through a string of, happy accidents. The group of people I was going to be living with going into college they kind of backed out on me, through no fault of their own. Some of them had situation changes, all that stuff. Anyways, the town my dad was living in had happened to have an outlet of the college I was going to in that town. So I kind of, kill two birds with one stone type of thing. Finally get to, live with Dad for a while. Get to go to school, relatively free living, all that, all the perks. And it was one of those things we like I said, used to watch the shows, and I don't remember what one, it was either Ghost Adventures or Ghost Hunters we were watching at the time. And it was one of those weird 2 a.m. decisions. It's like, what, we could do that, right? And it was, like those groggy 2 a.m. decisions that are really good or really bad. And it turned out to be something really good. And honestly, if I'm being completely honest, it was about 2 a.m. and my frame of mind was a little patchy, so I don't remember how we actually came up with All Out Paranormal's name. But we'd come up with that, general idea for the logo, all that good stuff that night. And then, the ball kind of rolled from there. We started doing investigations at haunted locations, started getting a little more of a reputation, started doing people's houses, started working shows. And then eventually I hit a point in my life where I was kind of going through a bit of a change. I started shaking things up. That's when I adopted the nomadic part of me, and I started moving, just kind of all over the place. And I realized that
AOP is always going to be a me and Dad thing. And, as much as I'd like to keep doing stuff with AOP, and it's going to continue doing stuff with AOP, no doubt about it. But, there's going to be stuff I'm going to be doing on my own. And that's why I kind of adopted the Paranormadic thing. It kind of was this perfect little hodgepodge of the two, biggest parts of my life at the time. So, yeah, that's where both those kind of came from.
All right. So I know you are more recently have started doing more on your own, and how is that going so far?
So far, so good. It's different. It's provided just a lot of opportunities so far. I get to work with a variety of people, and get to experience like the full dynamic of actually working with other people other than just your core team. There's you remove a bit of the safety net because there is kind of a dynamic to not just working with the team you've worked with for 5+ years, but then it also being your dad, you kind of remove a little bit of that safety net, which I feel like is kind of essential for actual growth to a certain degree. So I'm having fun with it. I always look forward to going back doing the AOP stuff, but the solo stuff is also very cool.
All right. So what is the craziest thing you've ever heard or seen during an investigation? And where was it at?
So craziest probably my first encounter with poltergeist type activity, as I like to describe it. That's the things actually moving, actually interacting with the quote unquote real world. The one we're able to perceive at least. Mm-hmm. And it was a place called the Old School Saloon. It's in it was in the middle of nowhere, Illinois. It's now I want to say it's been sold or closed since last investigating there. But and it's actually weird. There's a series of events. So it started at, I was in the basement doing a little bit of stuff by myself. Dad and my brother were in the attic, which would be I want to say 3 floors up from where I was at. Feels accurate. Anyway, so standing down there, I'm talking, and whoever's in the basement. Not necessarily the friendliest guy. Like the basement's his space, and he kind of prefers it that way. But he was also causing issues for some of the employees that were working at the time bar. So I was down there trying to kind of make a little contact with him, and it started with a milk cap kind of whizzing by my head and landing a few feet away from me, and obviously that caused me to be a little startled. I'm getting a little more anxious. And as that's occurring, I notice my equipment starts dying. I was running down there with a just a standard digital camera I was using to take pictures, night vision camera, and a digital recorder. And the night vision camera I was using died. And I was like, okay, are you, it looks like I'm, because it was at an unusual pace. And I was just like, okay, so I feel like you're maybe using this, the battery life from this camera for something. What exactly is it that you plan on doing? And all of a sudden there's this intense banging on the heating vents, and it came in series of like 3-4 bangs. And it had been one set of bangs. It probably would have debunked it as a, expansion, contraction, and heating vent, despite the fact it was June and the heat obviously wasn't on. But it had continued, actually. So I'm standing there, and I hear this banging, and like I said, the camera was dead, but we have audio of me still trying to basically talk at this heating vent. I was like, is that you? What are you doing? And the banging is getting increasingly closer, so it works its way up the heating vent. And the way this basement was set up was I was sitting at the base of the stairs, and the heating vent goes further into the basement and kind of towards my general direction at the base of the stairs. And so it's banging up the heating vent. It's starting in my general direction, and it stops maybe 3 or 4 feet away from me. At this point, I'm in an absolute panic. I've got my dad and my brother on the radio, like, hey, shit's banging. I need a camera or something to send somebody down. So my brother, being the brave soul that he was, came down, threw a camera at me, and ran back upstairs. So I'm down there with that camera, still shaking. I'm taking pictures. It was a full spectrum. So I'm taking pictures of that, and that camera dies. And then my standard digital camera dies. I was like, all right, so the last time you did this, that was pretty crazy. That was quite the display put on for me. And one of the claims at this location was a CO2 tank that exploded. Now, that could have any number of real-world, explanations, but they were convinced it was paranormal. So I thought I'd indulge in to be like, hey, look at you, I'm over there talking near the CO2 tank. And I'm like, okay, so you've used up all this energy. You can obviously do something big. And for the second time in my career, I said a phrase I later regretted, which was do something to impress me. And this, so I'm standing, looking at the CO2 tank. I look over a bit further into the basement, and this two-handed push cart, like a dolly. I'm talking about, they put like boxes on it, they stack it up, you tilt it, roll it on two wheels. Yep. It actually kind of flipped on its axis, like somebody take it by the handles and just, slung it to the ground. And before I can get my, radio in my head, I got Dad right over the radio. He was like, what did you just do? Like it was something like I had done, like I was just down there goofing around or something. Between the fact that it's, it was something that was actually that intense, and it was within, my first couple of years of investigating, I would definitely say that is the craziest of my events.
All right. So to lighten things up, I was told you can do a certain barnyard animal impression that you were doing when you were really little. So I was wondering if we can hear it.
That's my way of coping with allergies. So it's an inner ear thing, and for some reason it sounds like a pig. So it's probably not going to translate the best because I'm not all congested and stuff right now. But that sort of thing. But I feel like we're completely overlooking the fact that you can like perfectly mimic a goat.
Shut up.
So I feel like everybody deserves to hear that as well.
Why?
Oh, because you made me sound like a pig, that's why.
Wow. All right. I hate you. But I'll do it.
Brilliant.
There you go. The pig and the goat. All right. So recently I saw some pretty exciting news on your Paranormadic site about a new ghost tour you're getting to start at a location.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, would you like to tell listeners about that?
Yeah, definitely. So, when I first started doing my nomadic lifestyle stuff, I found a campground northeast Iowa, Spook Cave in campground. It's up here in McGregor, and it's it's kind of been it's been my home for the last 3 years, and a place called Spook Cave that obviously deserves some sort of paranormal recognition, right? So, having lived here, heard, people had experiences, people, including myself, that I just kind of experienced weird stuff throughout the campground. And after about 3 years of barking up trees and making plans and stuff, it is finally happening. So actually, in 4 days, almost exactly from now, we'll be starting our first ever Spook Cave ghost tours. If anybody needs any full details on that, you can always go to www.theparanomad.com/Spook Cave Ghost Hunt. And that's got all the details, which I'll probably ramble off here in a minute anyways. But So yeah, the property itself, pretty, I wouldn't say extremely haunted, but there's definitely some funky energy to here. It's northeast Iowa. It's close to Effigy Mounds, Pikes Peak. It's very sacred native grounds, that sort of thing. On top of the fact that at one point the Spook Cave property was actually pretty close slash on top of a old railroad town, which used to be Beulah, Iowa. Now, Beulah does not exist anymore, but for some reason you can still find it on Google Maps. It's about where our 2-acre lake is now. So what happened to Beulah was railroad was becoming big in the area about mid-1800s, and they put in a switch in proximity to, where, the Spook Cave property is now. And, that switch obviously needed someone to run it. That ended up, more people came around the switch and building a town. Eventually it became known as Beulah. Now 1896 rolls around and there was a flash flood. About a 20-foot wall of water had come in, leveled Beulah, and actually killed about 19 people. So they rebuilt. More floods kept coming through, and eventually the town just kind of dissipated to nothing. I want to say the last year it was officially considered a town was like 1917. But, it was that local legend of, those 19 people still haunt the area. Spook Cave was at one point a spook hole. And that was mostly because it was just the entrance to the cave, as we know it now, was actually only about a 6-inch hole at the base of the bluff. And locals called it Spook Hole because they were hearing funky sounds coming from inside. And most people could speculate anymore that was just the sound of the water inside the cave. But, it was always kind of an area of mystery. So, yeah, we will be doing investigations now. I can actually... So if the original longitude, latitude coordinates of Beulah correct, and when it transferred over to Google Maps, it actually gave us a almost exact location of where Beulah was, which is essentially where our 2-acre lake is now. So it'll be a 3-part investigation. The first part's going to be actually right at the lake, kind of down the beach area, and we'll do maybe an hour there. We'll move further, into the campground. We have a old storage building, and investigation will eventually kind of move into the basement there. And it's a basement. It's like I mentioned, I've been tons of places. It takes a lot for a place just to genuinely creep me out for what feels like no reason. And this basement is one of those places. So we haven't had a huge stream of the paranormal claims out of the basement. Maybe because not a lot of people necessarily stick around long enough. But the property, not the property so much, but the land in front of the basement's been kind of a hot spot. People claim to see a tall white figure kind of walking that grassy area. So hopefully we can invite whoever that is down into the basement to hang out for a bit. And that'll eventually move into Spook Cave itself. And the plan for that, honestly, I think it's going to be kind of a fun one. So what I'm hoping for is to make the entrance to the cave. Are you familiar with the Estes method yet with ITC? Basically, it's taking a subject who is basically going to be kind of checked out of the investigation for a moment to wear a pair of soundproof headphones hooked up to ITC device, so a spirit box, Spiritus, Necrophonic, and they basically speak whatever words they hear through the device, and that kind of removes the pareidolia effect of our brain trying to fill in gaps when it comes to questions. So there's not really a big mistake of what's being heard that's created by bias. Anyway, so I'll probably take them to the very back of the cave, having absolutely no interaction with anybody in the boat. And then I'll take it off. We'll do an investigation pretty much entirely in the dark. Which for any listeners who haven't experienced what actual pitch black is, I've basically been in a dark room. But the light in the cave is so minimal that your eyes actually literally never adjust to it. And it just creates a weird, it's one of those weird primal type of fears of the dark that maybe some people wouldn't necessarily have before. Just a very cool dynamic for investigation. So we still have open availability for September 26th, October 1st, and we do have one spot open for October 26th still. So if there's a lone soul out there looking for a kind of a fix around Halloween time, that'll be available. But yeah, very excited for the event. I'm actually working on kind of doing some small investigations throughout the campground, kind of trying to find hot spots. I'm planning on releasing on the 25th small videos of kind of each location, small bits and pieces of investigations at those locations. Just an overall very exciting thing, because this is the first time in history that Spook Cave has ever really done anything like this.
All right. So in the comments, we have a question from Matt. Question: what's on your bucket list to investigate?
So that is a huge list. I'd say at the top of the list is Waverly Hills Sanatorium. It was one of those first paranormal locations that really caught my interest for some reason or another. It's probably because of the documentary Spooked made by Christopher St. Booth. Just kind of developed this, I wouldn't quite say obsession, but just deep fascination with the location. So that's probably at the top of the list, and I think the only reason I haven't been out to yet is due to expenses. So hopefully within the next couple of years we can make Waverly Hills be a thing. But like the underground vaults in Edinburgh, Scotland, I feel like would be really cool. Alcatraz, of course, would be a awesome location. The bucket list is very huge. I'm hoping to get through at least half of it before I end up on the other side of the EVP session, if you get my drift.
All right. So, when you're investigating, what are some of your favorite snack foods?
Okay, so this is going to sound really weird. Olives.
All right.
My first stint at so I did have a documentary back in 2013 at Edinburgh, where I put myself in there for 5 days, kind of solo. I had brought a box of food with me, and for some reason olives were part of the concoction, and it's just always been something that if I'm doing a long investigation, for some reason I have to have olives with me.
And ever since that day, he brought olives to every investigation. All right. So, where is a place that you've investigated that you wouldn't have known about, basically, without somebody telling you? Yeah.
I feel like any residential haunting that I had ever done would fall underneath that category. I'm trying to think of any specifically. Probably Renwick, where we first met. I hadn't quite heard of until somebody mentioned it. Honestly, I think even Edinburgh, because it was 2013. It was before Ghost Adventures had taped there. It was I wouldn't say a well-kept secret up to that point, but it was definitely a less well-known location, and I'm trying to remember who exactly told me of it. But yeah, I would say most of them that aren't super well known, like the Beliscas, the Waverly Hills, Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylums, if it wasn't a big famous haunting, probably wouldn't know about it if it wasn't to the credit of somebody else.
All right. So where is a place you have investigated that you wouldn't have new investigators go without someone experienced?
Literally anywhere with even the slightest inkling that there might be negative energy. So Edinburgh Manor is a good example. The Belisca Axe Murder House is a phenomenal example. Even places like I wouldn't quite go all the way to Farrar, but I mean, there have been, claims of things happening to people there.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, you have your people that are out there looking for that cheap thrill. They saw what's-his-face with spiky hair and muscles get possessed in this place, so this obviously has to be a fantastic location. And, going, anywhere there's even a slight inkling of negativity, because, I wouldn't even say half of haunted locations are negative haunts. I would say a good portion of them are very positive things. It's more people that are just... It's people who they live there. I think more people are fascinated with, who died here. And, for any new investigator, I'd definitely recommend just, go in there with the question of, who lived here instead of who died here.
All right. So, when you're not investigating, what are some of your favorite activities/hobbies?
Reading about haunted locations, looking into paranormal theory. It takes up the paranormal stuff is a huge portion of my time. I try to be a physically active guy, so I like doing my hiking. I work out usually 5 days a week. Pretty much anything that gets me physical, because, with the paranormal stuff, it's, the investigations can't get me physical at times, but other times, you're just sitting behind a monitor for 8+ hours at a time for review, so anything physical, I'm usually a pretty big activist for, as far as my hobbies go.
All right. So when you're out investigating with your dad, what was the most active place you have been to?
Outside of my grandparents' house, which honestly I would say would be at the top of the list, but I feel like I've talked about that a few times. Top of the list would probably be, honestly, the Old School Saloon. It was one of our earlier investigations, and it was also our first kind of residential, so that was a kind of, cool, exciting thing. And it probably sticks out in my head more because we investigated it several times. But there was always, something weird happening. It was our first kind of example of, I'm sure most paranormal investigators can relate to this. The first time we ever had anything that was like, holy crap, that was a lot of activity. Like, as soon as we closed the cases, like, the spirits were kind of screwing with us a little bit. It was a first example of that. It was a bar, so we occasionally hear, like, pool balls clacking. It was just it was a pretty active location.
All right. So I know that you're not a big fan of the Ouija board. Is there any reason why you're not a big fan of it, or you just don't like it?
So it's, I feel like as we grow up, we get these, mental, stuff that we're taught over and over time, and it just kind of sticks, and eventually you stop questioning it, it starts being a thing. And I wouldn't necessarily say I'm not a huge fan of the Ouija board anymore. Talking to people, it's definitely, I've been enlightened on it. It's more about the energy you put into it than the actual use of the item itself. But there's also, you hear the horror stories, and it kind of makes you shy away from those type of things. Best example being the Exorcist. It always kind of makes you a little, hesitant. But yeah, I mean, aside from that, it's one of those things I prefer to use, as much as I am a advocate for going out and just making a genuine connection with spirits. I'm also a documentarian. I try to do things as scientifically as possible. So honestly, one of my biggest reasons right now for not wanting to play with a Ouija board is it's because there's direct human contact. And whenever that happens, it becomes something a little more fallible. So it's not to say that the ITC devices that we develop are 100% spot on. It's not to say our digital recorders aren't without flaw. But as soon as you make physical contact with that, you add a human factor in that you just simply can't take to anybody and say, hey, this is teeters on what you would call scientific proof. I don't. I try to shy away from the word evidence anymore, just because evidence is beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I feel like once you make that sort of physical contact, you can never totally say, hey, this is beyond a shadow of a doubt, unless you take your hands off and you see that planet kind of swinging all around the board and flying off, and you have that on camera. So yeah, I'm easing up on my. I don't know if I want to say fear of the Ouija board, but yeah, it's still not anything that I would use on anything that I would call a serious paranormal investigation.
All right. In talking about Ouija boards, so I can't disclose who gave it to me or the location, but let's just say someone close by, they had a problem with the Ouija board, and we gave them to you. What was the activity that you got from the Ouija board, and really what happened?
In this hypothetical situation, somebody had acquired a Ouija board from a residential haunt. It was then later taken from that person by, let's say, my dad and I. And we couldn't really do anything with it at first. So it sat on our front porch because we didn't want to totally take it into the house, because we did have reason to believe it was linked to the activity in the house. So we kept it on our front porch, and during that time, things in the office on the wall that sat to the outside, so it would be the outside wall of the house where the Ouija board would have been, stuff kept falling off the walls. We would have this weird occurrence where it sounded like an animal was tearing around the second floor of the house when all of the animals were well accounted for on the ground floor. And then, I moved away, so I'm not 100% sure what Dad said he had done with it, but I believe it's been taken care of.
Yeah. All right. So Shay has a question. So Shay wants to ask, does he think a Ouija board is the same as stuff like Spirit Box, etc.? I would hazard to say they are similar. And it's, honestly, I feel like I've kind of adopted the mindset. It's more about the invitation than it is the actual use. So, when I say, I'm using a Ouija board, when it's sway around, whatever, I'm saying, hey, I'm inviting you to spell out words for me. And it teeters on something that's not much different than saying, hey, I have a box here in my hand. It's got a blinking red light. Come talk to it. I would say there would be, some differences. I would be lying if I said I was any sort of expert in the Ouija board. But to me, it almost feels like it's inviting almost something a little more in depth than that, just being that your hands are physically in contact with it. And I don't know if it's necessarily that it's moving on its own, or if you're saying, hey, go ahead and use me to move this. I can't really say one way or the other. I would, if I were to use it in a paranormal investigation, I would give it as much merit as I would an ITC device, like we'll say Ovulus, for example, where it's not. I'm not going to take this as this is exactly what they're trying to say. For me, I would think of it more as a barometer than an actual solid measuring tool, if that makes sense. All right, so we're going to get off the Ouija boards, and we're going to have a little fun, basically. So, do you have a favorite music that you like to listen before you go on an investigation, just to get you pumped?
It kind of fluctuates on location. If I know I'm going into something heavier, it's usually something a little more relaxed, some kind of calm me down if it's, just standard investigation. I feel like Led Zeppelin's almost a prerequisite for any. It just kind of depends on what album/song I'm jamming to beforehand.
All right. So who would you consider the person who has mentored you the most since you started?
Honestly, I'm not totally sure I could give credit to any one person in particular. I feel like everybody I've encountered has had something to offer me. So, like, working with my dad all these years, I feel like we were, just as much learning together as it was a, mentorship type of thing. It was, I feel like it's just been instead of a singular person being a mentor throughout this whole process, it's just been a, string of, wonderful people, fantastic events that have kind of led me to where I'm at this point in time.
All right. So what is your most favorite place to investigate and why?
I'm going to have to say I do have a bit of a weak spot for the Edinburgh Manor, just because I have that kind of unique relationship with it, so to speak, where I put myself in there kind of alone for 5 days. I became very accustomed to, the spirits in there. It just always kind of resonates with me well. I can always kind of tell even when I'm within 5 miles of a location, if I have no idea where I'm at a particular time. Just always kind of know I'm close. It's a place that just, it always kind of, for some reason, brings me back, and I've never had a bad experience there, per se. I've had some interesting ones. Edinburgh Manor.
All right. So have you ever been freaked out at an investigation by something that that happened, or, you heard something, but, what was it that freaked you out, basically?
So it would kind of, it would almost kind of depend. So I've been working with this idea, and it's that there's more than one type of fear. So if you were saying, what caused the biggest jump scare, it's probably the time that cart flipped me in front of in the old school saloon. There's this concept in my mind of a fear that's not necessarily instantaneous, but something that kind of, grinds you down over time, in which case 5 days isolated to the Edinburgh Manor would take that list. It kind of, it wasn't any singular incident in there, but it was 5 days of just constantly being worn on by, the sound of a baby crying, or footsteps above me when I was the only person in the building, or conversations down the hall that I could never quite seem to find where they were coming from. Mm-hmm. It almost kind of works on you like a grindstone. So, after my time there, I had issues of paranoia. I couldn't, I wasn't able to function normally for about a month afterwards. Or, they've also got that kind of fear that doesn't jump scare you. It doesn't, wear down on you over time, but it's something that happens very quickly that kind of changes your perspective on everything. It's a very deep fear. And that would probably be my first time at Farrar. I had a kind of encounter with the principal, superintendent, whoever that kind of guy was, and it wasn't anything that he did in particular. It was one of those instances where I didn't have my guard up. It was my first experience of what I would almost kind of think it was like a channeling type of thing. I don't think it wasn't, a spiky-haired guy possession, but I definitely wasn't me for a while. And, that kind of was one of those, it created like a deep fear. Like, holy crap, this is something that can not just, touch me physically now, but this can get into my head. And there's something, a deep, I don't know if you would call it primal fear to that, but it's something that you definitely recognize once you experience it.
All right. So I know in a few short months you will be getting married to an awesome young lady named Alyssa. And when will this be happening?
It's November 23rd.
All right. Okay, so this will be the last question before we start some fun stuff, you know?
Okay.
Okay. So, it's time to shout out any upcoming events that you will be attending so listeners can come get one of your awesome free hug shirts and places you'll be investigating. Oh, and also you can put All Out Paranormal and Paranormatic. So.
Yeah. So, shoot, I almost want to run inside, grab my schedule real quick. So most recent is going to be the first ever Spook Cave Ghost Hunt coming up September 26th. The day after that, I'm actually taking off for Ames for the Ames Psychic and Paranormal Expo. And after that, it brings us into October. And I want to say that one is mostly comprised of Spook Cave events. So being there's 4 dates, kind of eats up most of my weekends. And then, stuff's still kind of up in the air for November. So, 2 most upcoming events, the Spook Cave events, which, again, you can find at theparanomad.com/Spook Cave Ghost Hunt, or, the Ames Psychic Paranormal Expo, which, if you were to find me online, you can pretty much find links to that a little bit everywhere.
All right. So, shall we start the fun stuff?
Well, it depends on what you mean by fun stuff. I'm a little nervous.
All right. So we're going to be playing a game. Any thoughts?
I think I'm ready, yeah.
All right. So this is called Rapid Fire with Madi. Basically, you just want to answer the questions as fast as you can. And yes, I will be timing you, so.
All right. Let's do it.
Hold on, I gotta stop punch. There you go. All right. Ready?
Go.
So what's your nickname?
Kitty.
Okay.
Paranomad, one of the two. Kitty definitely predates Paranomad.
All right. Who do you admire the most?
Buddha.
All right. What is your dream job?
That's the correct answer, but it's the first one that came to mind. Staying in campground management like I am.
All right. Describe yourself in 3 words.
I'm almost awesome.
No, you're always awesome. There you go.
We can deal with that too.
Okay, so if you could be any animal, what would it be?
Domesticated house cat in a place that isn't being, it's not a hoarding situation. I just want to be able to lounge around, do nothing all day for at least a little while.
Oh. Okay. So what is your favorite movie quote?
Oh, man. We were in the desert 30 miles outside of Barstow when the drugs took hold.
All right. So what is your favorite addiction?
I feel like no addiction is positive, but if I had to look at it clinically from a positive addiction, I would say that I am very much conscious and constantly working at taking care of myself physically. So I've watched very much what I put in myself, borderline to excess as far as food, all that stuff, and my workout regimen.
Mm-hmm. All right. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how cool are you?
7.
All right. What is your favorite song?
That fluctuates from month to month. Right now, it is Hush by Deep Purple.
All right. What is the thing that you're most scared of in life?
I try to avoid the habit of being in fear of certain things, but becoming old and just kind of having to be completely codependent, like losing my ability to take care of myself.
All right. And talking about fear, what do you fear?
Clowns, porcelain dolls, Lord of the Dance.
All right. So if you were a superhero, like what superhero would you be?
Thor.
Okay. Best childhood memory?
There's quite a few of them. Probably any time I went camping.
All right. Where is the worst place you could get stuck at?
Really one place for too long. Any given place for too long just kind of drives me nuts.
All right. So what would you do on Mars for fun?
Granted, I wouldn't die instantly. If it was just me, in this hypothetical situation, it's just me, I just somehow teleported to Mars, wouldn't die from the atmospheric conditions, I would definitely build weird stuff to make the people on Earth question what the hell was going on Mars.
All right. So who is your favorite person to investigate with?
Right now, honestly, it's only been once, but I'm recalling very fondly working with Chris Sutton at Farrar the last time.
All right.
I don't know if there's a particular favorite person all of the time. I like my variety.
All right. So who is your favorite superhero?
Favorites. Are we talking of all time? Or are we talking current, like, movies? Because of all time...
You can go what you want, like, so anything.
Shoot that in there. Anything?
Yeah.
Probably Batman.
All right. So if a movie was made of your life, who would play as you?
You see, this is one of those trap questions because I have no idea. Like, I'd like Leonardo DiCaprio, even though we don't really look anything like each other.
All right. So what is your favorite hobby?
I'd say the gym.
All right. So what's your greatest achievement?
Quitting cigarettes.
All right. So what was the last time that you got scared?
So, the Spook Cave, I've been doing investigations on the campground, and I was sitting down by, like, lakeside. Mm-hmm. I was kind of conducting an EVP session, minding my own business, and a walnut fell out of a tree, like, 2 feet behind me. And I left my chair a little too quickly for somebody who is supposed to be a seasoned veteran of paranormal investigations.
Wow. A walnut.
It's never the paranormal stuff that scares me. It's always the, you have that height and you have that anticipation, and then it's something real world and it's very active. So, like, I've been absolutely terrified by, like, squirrels chattering in trees, somebody, walking up behind me when I wasn't expecting it. Yeah, it's never the ghost spirits that startle me. It's always the real stuff.
Wow. Okay, and the last one. Where do you go to relax?
My van.
All right. So your time is 7 minutes and 33 seconds.
Is that good?
Well, I guess, like...
We're going to say it's good. We're going to say we're trying to beat 10 minutes, and we did that successfully.
Yes, we did it. Well, you did it, but... I was here. I could say that I did it, yeah.
Well, I'm going to give you a little bit of credit on that, yeah. It was a very rapid-fire question.
Yes.
You were conserving time very well.
Yes. I was trying to ask them very quickly. You know?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I can hear Spiritus, and the Spirit's telling me that our time is basically up.
All right, yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah. But before we do go, would you like to tell us some of your Instagram, like, social media, basically?
Yeah, so anywhere you can find me on the internet, social media, it'll be under the handle at the Paranomad. That is at BPARANOMAD. And that's social media. You can also find me on theparanomad.com. So right now, that the Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube's first 3 episodes will be actual Spook Cave events, being that this is kind of a newer project for me. Not a ton of content out yet, but it's I'm pretty confident it's all going to be good stuff. Theparanomad.com is going to be stuff like personal stories, investigation information, location bios, experiments. I just put out a fun article called Crack and Dangle, that I'm hoping is clickbait just because of the weird name. Just pretty much kind of like a one-stop website for ideally anything paranormal that people would want to know. Anything The Paranomad, you should be able to find me just fine. All
right. So thank you, Chris, for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on and chatting with myself and my listeners here on Spoopy Talk.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure.
All right. So I want you to have a great night. Now, for all my listeners out there,
you do the same.
I would really like to say thank you for being with me tonight. My next show will be September 8th at 5 Central and 6 Eastern. And my guest will... And my guest will be Ashley Godwin, if I'm saying that right? But yeah. So make sure if you're not following me, give me a follow at Madison Paranormal Investigation on Facebook and Madi_Paranormal_Investigation on Instagram. So for tonight, peace, love, and happiness. And most of all, be spoopy, everyone.